Hello and good evening, everyone. On behalf of Virtual Professional Learner Network team, I would like to welcome you all for tonight's webinar. We have two valuable guests for tonight, and before we start, I would like to hand it over to my dear colleague, Dr. Solmaz, for the opening remarks.
Thank you, Özge Hocam, for the introduction. I am very happy to welcome everyone to tonight's webinar session. This is the 7th edition of the webinars that we are organizing for language teachers and language teacher candidates all around the world, particularly from Turkey. So feel free to write where you are attending today. And we have two distinguished speakers, Dr. Selami Aydın and İsmail Çakır from Istanbul and Ankara. They will be presenting on the different aspects of language learning processes in different parts of the language classes. And we will have two main sessions focusing on Facebook as a writing environment, and also we will be focusing on using language reading circles. So that being said, I would like to invite you all to continue to participate in our sessions, as we will have the next one scheduled for the mid-April, which will essentially focus on culture. So throughout the session, if you have any questions and that you would like to direct at our speakers, feel free to write in Q&A session, and have a great webinar session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this nice opening remarks. And yes, I can see that we have a lot of participants tonight with us. And I would like to kindly remind that we are going to have bigger Q&A session after the two talks. So I think we are all really looking forward to tonight's webinar, and I would like to introduce our first speaker tonight. Our first speaker is Professor Dr. Selami Aydın from Istanbul Medeniyet University. And some of his research areas are writing, testing, and technology use and social media effects on language learning and teaching. So tonight, he will be talking about the social media use and the digitized English language classrooms, for which we are really looking forward to. So I'm handing it over to Professor Aydın. So the screen is yours. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Özge Hocam, thank you very much for your introduction. Let me share my screen.
Yes, that will be great. Now we can see you, and the screen is there as well.
Can you see the following page, Özge Hocam?
Not now. It is in PPT layout. Maybe is it better to make it full screen?
Okay, let me try another way.
Yes, sometimes we need to do this because of Zoom updates. Yes.
I think it is okay now.
Yes, perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Özge Hocam. Özge Hocam, Osman Hocam, and the dear members of this excellent group. I would like to thank you for this organization, and dear all, I would like to thank you all of you for their kind participation. As you can see, the title of my presentation is Facebook as a Writing Environment. So there's a crucial question. Can we use Facebook as a writing environment? Is it possible or not? Actually, first we should talk about portfolios. Now, at the beginning, we should underline that writing is the most difficult and challenging skills when compared to receptive skills, listening and reading. In addition to speaking skills, writing also constitutes a problematic area in the process of foreign language learning. So mainly teachers may encounter certain difficulties in encouraging students to write, and there are several ways to solve these problems. To solve this problem, portfolios actually may be an ideal example of developing writing skills among foreign language learners. So portfolios may bring several advantages. The first one is that they can be alternative assessment tools in the classroom. Mostly, there is an empty page and students are forced to write in classroom settings. On the other hand, we all know that it takes too much time to start and finish a written piece. On the other hand, in addition to the practices in the language classes, portfolios can be used as an alternative assessment tool. So we also know that we suffer from fabricated texts in our language classes. The texts are fabricated, they're artificial, so we need an authentic language indeed regarding 4 basic skills. And in terms of writing, it is possible to use authentic materials, and it is possible to participate in the writing process actively. And another problem is that in the specifically Turkish education ELT context, teachers mainly focus on structural issues such as grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, etc. And they're all thought in isolated drills. This may constitute a problem. On the other hand, we should know that we should, as teachers, use a language and teach language in its context. So portfolios give us a chance to use materials, reading materials in context. And all of these issues are all supported by resources of Indeed. And according to research results, we know that using portfolios for developing writing skills fosters grammatical and lexical competence, and students may increase their content knowledge. To be brief, using portfolios in language classes develops our proficiency skills. And again, according to research results, students feel motivated while they are designing and producing a portfolio, and they are satisfied with their products. So, mostly, writing skills can be seen as an isolated skill indeed. On the other hand, we should also know that all of those basic skills are interrelated, and one skill may not be isolated from another one. Within this scope, for example, we can use a video, a listening material in our portfolio. We can use a reading text, and we can speak about what we wrote. So the activities in our portfolios also develop our productive skills and receptive language skills. Research also indicates that our students increase the quality of their writing, and students feel involved in the activities, and specifically using portfolios is a good way to analyze the texts in the target language, and these texts may include contextual cues. By this way, students can easily analyze, read, and understand the text, and students increase their awareness of the target language culture. Another point is that mostly students are forced to write in their language classes. On the other hand, portfolios allow students to develop their autonomous learning skills. So e-portfolios, actually, it stands for electronic portfolios, They are practical and useful. That is because in a traditional portfolio, you need to pick up lots of papers, pages of papers. Within this scope, it is more advantageous than a regular and traditional portfolio. In class sessions, we have time limitations. On the other hand, while designing our e-portfolios, there is no any time constraint or limitation. And also, please remember that there are several writing approaches, product-based approach, for example, genre-based approach, or reader-dominated approach. You can use different approaches in your e-portfolios. On the other hand, according to research results, e-portfolios are the most appropriate for process-based writing approach. Within this scope, for example, in the brainstorming session and planning session, in first draft revision sessions, portfolios would be very helpful for our students, and mostly in the EFL context, we can prefer process-based writing approach. That is because it is the most advantageous one regarding the traditional or electronic portfolios. And portfolios based on learning outcomes. Actually, in the classroom, we write, and when the class ends, we leave the class. On the other hand, we may not aware of what we learned. And also, while using electronic portfolios, we need to use digital environments. Mostly, please also recall that our students are mostly digital natives, and they are familiar with using that kind of tools and environments. And they can have virtual identities. That is because they are really accustomed to use the internet or some applications. And also, the text may be authentic, and they can create a blog page, they can use their text in social media environments and tools, and they can produce reflective artifacts. And also, any portfolio can be integrated to other environments. For example, if you produce a good written piece, you can publish it as on your blog page. And it increases the responsibility of the students. And for regarding life learning, e-portfolios are helpful for longitudinal learning. That is because writing never ends, and after your students graduate from university or high school, they can go on working on writing. On the other hand, we should also know that e-portfolios may have certain potential problems. First, some of the students feel bored, and they perceive that keeping an electronic portfolio is time-consuming. On the other hand, we should remember that according to research results, using e-portfolios also increases writing motivation. On the other hand, some studies claim that it is boring and time-consuming. And from the perspective of teacher, it is really difficult to grade portfolios. That is because there are lots of pages, and it is a huge amount of papers. How should we grade them? Actually, there are certain strategies and tactics considering the reliability and the validity of those materials. You can grade, however, you need some instruction. And for e-portfolios, specific software should be developed. And teachers are teachers. They may not be good at developing software, and that is because it's another professional area. Most of the teacher may fail developing software. This is another disadvantage. And they're actually not cheap. It is always not possible to purchase an e-portfolio. And both teachers and learners need instructions regarding how to use e-portfolios in their EFL writing classes. These were the disadvantages. Actually, we should underline that any system, any tool, any environment may have certain advantages and disadvantages. So e-portfolios are not excellent. It has certain, they have certain advantages and they have certain drawbacks. So when we use that kind of materials, we should be aware of those advantages and the limitations. On the other hand, we know that Facebook is a Web2 tool. It is ideal for interaction and communication in our normal life. And mostly, I don't know the latest or recent numbers about how many of our students use Facebook nowadays. However, a few years ago, I know that most of our students were Facebook users. And when we use Facebook as a portfolio tool, maybe for teachers, it may be easier to grade the papers. And also, we use Facebook in our social interaction and communication in our routine life. On the other hand, according to research results, some pedagogical expectations can be provided via Facebook. And one of the disadvantages was that regarding e-portfolios, we as teachers and learners, as students, need special interaction. On the other hand, mostly our students know how to use Facebook, and also we don't have to pay for Facebook. These are certain advantages that make Facebook a learning environment and a tool. So in order to understand whether Facebook can be used as a writing environment or as a tool, we carried out research. 101 EFL learners, they were all students enrolled in, at the Department of English Language Teaching. It was a quasi-experimental study, and in this study we used process-based writing approach. In order to measure students' attitudes, in order to measure how Facebook contributes to writing, and to understand whether our students encounter any problem, we administered 3 tools. F portfolio. F stands for Facebook. E-portfolios. After e-portfolios, we use the letter F. F portfolio means Facebook portfolio. And we use 3 instruments: F portfolio attitude scale, the portfolio contribution questionnaire, and finally, the portfolio problem questionnaire. We administered these tools to 101 language learners at a state university in Turkey. Actually, we can talk about the methodology of the study. However, I know that these are some specific details, and actually at this stage we don't need them, but we can mention what we do. First of all, we created a Facebook group. As you can see, to this group, you can add photographs, you can lead discussion sessions, and you can add your information. And there is a wall, and this wall can be used by both teachers and students. And our students in the experiment joined in this group, and this group is named as F portfolio. And also we said that we used process-based approach in this experiment. And as you know, the first step is brainstorming. Our students first used brainstorming strategies before designing their written pieces, and after brainstorming, they planned what to write in their papers. And this was a necessity of process-based writing approach. You can see on the screen an outline of a text and then they received peer feedback. In this session, the piece was checked and controlled and evaluated by another peer in the classroom, and every student had a peer, and they created some feedback, and then they asked some questions, and these questions are standard questions indeed. For example, does the essay have an introduction, two-body paragraph, and a conclusion section? These are very general questions, and these questions were answered by the peer, and also these were related to the technique used. For example, in a cause and effect paragraph or in a compare and contrast paragraph, there are certain issues that should be evaluated by the peer. After answering this question, our students created a list of revision. So after having peer feedback, the student created, made a list of revision. In this list, the student prepared what should he or she must do in the following step. In the following step, they wrote their second draft, and then at the end, after the second draft, they received teacher feedback. And these feedback was quite specific. For example, you should note at least 5 items and use a case letter, for example, use comma, etc. These were some punctuational, grammatical, or lexical problems in the paper. And then students created another list of revision after having feedback from their teacher. They created a list, and finally, they produced their final draft. And all of these process was performed in a Facebook group. So what happened at the end? And we said that we administered several data collection tools to the participants, and we found that EFL writers have positive attitudes towards the use of Facebook as a portfolio tool and environment. So they are positive. Another conclusion was that students perceived that F-Portfolio improves their reading and writing skills, and also they believe that it enhances vocabulary and grammar knowledge. And an interesting result is that students believe that using F-Portfolio in their writing process improves their research skills. So we can divide these findings into 3. First, students are positive. It means that they have positive attitudes, they have a high level of motivation, they feel less anxious, etc. So regarding their emotions, regarding their affects, they are positive. The second conclusion, in a general sense, we can say that writing skill cannot be isolated from other skills, reading and writing skills, reading and speaking skills, and listening skills. And also it develops vocabulary and grammar knowledge. And the third category is that research is quite important, in my opinion. And they believe that while they're planning and brainstorming their ideas, they needed to perform or carry out some research. And they, at the end, they stated that F-Portfolio develops their research skills. On the other hand, of course, not every student is happy about this process. Some of the students, but this is a low level of number of students, believe that this process was boring and they found it time-consuming and tiring. Yes, actually, students may choose the content. However, if you force students to write in a certain content, students may feel bored. while designing that kind of activities, you should pay attention to their interests. For example, time consuming, yes, that is because this study was performed in a writing class at the first year of a state university, and students have some other classes, students have lots of homework, assignments, etc., and it was tiring. On the other hand, the students experienced several problems, such as pre-writing activities, feedback, and revision sessions. Actually, we perceive that writing is an isolated skill, and we see it. We have empty paper, we write, we start to write, and we finish it. Actually, all of the students in Turkish EFL context specifically have that kind of perception. On the other hand, after this stage, they understood that it is not such an easy task. It requires certain steps, such as planning, pre-writing activities, including brainstorming and planning, and they needed to write feedback, and they receive feedback, and after that they created lists, and after that they wrote their second and third drafts. So within this scope, we can say that students experienced certain difficulties in the process-based writing approach. However, we can say that this stage, this problem may not relate to Facebook. That is because it includes the difficulties regarding the process-based writing approach. So, some gender differences. Male students feel more comfortable with F-portfolio. This is an interesting result indeed, a kind of gender difference. Another point is that female students have more fear of negative evaluation by their peers, sorry. So we can understand that while students write or produce their written pieces, they may experience some negative feelings, such as anxieties, such as communication apprehension, such as a negative evaluation, fear of negative evaluation, etc. Within this scope, female students seem more adversely, negatively affected by their evaluations of their peers. And at the end, I have some recommendations. Teachers should or can use F-portfolios. That is because the results indicates that using e-portfolios improves students' vocabulary and grammar knowledge. These are the knowledge areas, and it improves reading, research, and writing skills indeed. And also students should use e-portfolios if the teachers guide their students. Most of the students had Facebook while we are performing this activity, this research. Or on the other hand, today I know that most of our students do not use Facebook. And actually, the problems also can be divided into two. Some problems may relate to Facebook itself. Some problems may relate to writing technique or writing approach, etc. The teacher should be aware of the sources of those problems, and also Facebook familiarity, computer ownership, gender differences, or the time spent on Facebook may differ regarding developing their writing skills. Yes, that was all for me. Actually, I briefly summarized my study regarding the use of F-portfolio in the EFL learning context. If you like to know all of the details about this study, about this experiment, you can check these papers, EFL Writers' Attitudes and Perceptions Towards F-portfolio Use. And that was all. Dear all, thank you very much for listening to me.
And thank you very much for your interesting talk, Professor Aydın. Okay, so before we start with the second second presentation tonight, I would like to remind our participants that they can write their questions to the Q&A part of Zoom. And also, if you want to follow us on our social media accounts, you can find the details in the chat box, as well as the recording of the webinar tonight on our project website. I think it is time for our second presentation now, and I would like to introduce our second speaker tonight, Professor Dr. İsmail Çakır from Social Sciences University of Ankara, and he's currently the Dean of the Faculty of Foreign Languages at the same institution, and his research areas are English, teaching English as a foreign language, and the intersection of language and culture. We are really looking forward to your presentation, so the screen is yours, Dr. Çakır. We can see your presentation, but we can't hear you in case your microphone is off.
Okay, it's okay.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm leaving the screen to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. And I would like to thank for the organizing committee at the beginning. And I would like to, my second thanks go to the participants from all around Turkey and from all around the world. I think from Tanzania to Morocco, we have participants from different parts of Turkey and the world. Right. Selami just talked about the contribution of Facebook to writing, and in my webinar, in my presentation, I'm going to talk about the other language skill, which is reading. Okay, so this is my outline of the presentation. In my presentation, I'm going to mention 3 basic topics. So what is reading in foreign language teaching? And in relation to reading, we are going to learn what's extensive reading and how we can relate extensive reading to reading circles or literature circle. Okay, so what's reading? Okay, it's well, actually, we know what reading is, but reading is a process and product. That means when we read, we actively try to understand what we have read. We try to decode what the writer has encoded in a message, in a textual message. And in language classrooms, we always ask our students to read a lot, because we believe that when we ask or suggest them to read, they will improve a lot of linguistic and other aspects of language. But who is a good reader or bad reader? Well, we have some short definitions about good reader and bad reader. And according to good readers, a good reader doesn't understand, doesn't read much, doesn't enjoy reading. And a bad reader reads more, understands better, reads faster, enjoys reading. Well, actually, this is vice versa. It's not a good reader. Good reader understands better, reads more, reads faster, enjoys reading. Okay, so why do we need to read then? Why do we need to ask our students to read in the classroom? There are a lot of reasons. When we ask our students to read in the classroom, we know that they are going to be exposed to target language. The more they are exposed to target language, the better they learn the language. So in reading classes, we have also what? Integrated language skills. When we read, we can use, when we ask our students to read, we can integrate listening, speaking, and also writing. and vocabulary expansion, introduction to different cultures, knowledge in various topics, development of self-confidence, practice and target language in meaningful context, etc. They are all.
Ismail Hocam, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we can only see your first slide. I think the slideshow is not in progress.
Is it okay?
Right now, we can see the PPT layout, and it's only first slide.
Is it too slow?
No, can you make it full screen, the presentation, PowerPoint?
Well, I did. And okay, let me do it again.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Okay, this is the first slide, second slide.
Oh, no, I think we are still in the editing format. Right now, we can see the sixth slide. Why do we read? There are two main reasons for reading.
Okay. Is it okay now? Why do we read?
Yes, we are there, but we can see your PPT editing layout. It's not full screen for us.
Wait a minute. Is it full now?
No, unfortunately not.
Sorry for inconvenience.
No problem. Yeah, we had the same technical problem in our previous webinars as well.
Okay, let me do it slide.
Shall we start the screen sharing maybe with the full screen on again, maybe?
Yeah, I'm doing again. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Please don't feel the pressure. These technical problems are always they always happen.
Is it okay now?
Yes, perfect. Full screen, yes, now.
Okay.
And yes, okay.
I'm skipping these parts then because I don't want to talk about the same things again.
Yes,
right?
Now, yes, the fifth slide now.
Okay,
and,
right.
Yeah, perfect.
So why do we read? Well, in general, we have two main reasons for reading: reading for pleasure and reading for information, right? What about language learners? Why do you think they read? Well, there are actually three basic reasons: to improve their language, which is linguistic improvement. The other one is cultural improvement or development, and personal growth, right? So what do we read? Well, in L1, in L2, we read many things, well, from newspaper to digital media, right? Okay, so what about language learners, or in general yourself? What do you read, printed or digital text? Which one do you like most? Nowadays, I mean, many young learners or many people actually read digital-based texts rather than printed ones. Digital reading seems to have been gradually gaining ground and is an indissoluble part of intelligent reading. Yeah, many students, young people, even the old people, read a lot of text based on digital media. It's a part of our lives. We have a lot of digital sources, blogs, forums, etc. But many people also read comments. They're all related to reading. When we read something, that means we need to bring those things into classroom for foreign language context. So everything in learner's life should be brought into the classroom. But when it is in the classroom, many students find reading really difficult. Yes, because many students don't want to read because of some reasons. Because of what? We have some basic reasons. For example, lack of vocabulary, lack of interest, maybe strategies they used, and background information about the topic. If they are not interested in the topic, they may not understand the topic or the text easily. Right. What about at schools? I know many of the participants are working at schools. They are maybe language teachers and most of them are going to be language teachers at Turkish state schools in future. So these are some of the facts at Turkish schools. Students are passive receivers sitting at desks. They are forced to use ready-made published text. And there are, too much lines on the textbook and their curriculum guides. Teachers with limited knowledge of the subject taught, too much lines on the intensive reading procedures. Okay. So why do we need to use text in the classroom? Okay, reading is an inevitable part of language learning. We have to include 4 language skills in teaching context. We use text for instructional purposes as instructional materials and for sources of knowledge and information. So I talked about 2 types of reading. Maybe you are most of you are familiar with these 2 types. Actually, there are 2 types of reading: intensive reading and extensive reading. Intensive reading is the reading conducted under the guidance of the teacher in the classroom, and extensive reading is reading for pleasure, not only in the classroom, but out of the classroom. So let me talk about extensive reading. Okay, we have reading classes and students are not so satisfied with the reading that the teachers have done in the classroom, but we should combine intensive reading with extensive reading. What's extensive reading? Here we have some definitions. It's a self-directed learning activity. It is pleasure reading. It is free voluntary reading, sustained silent reading, book flood. They are all the definitions for extensive reading. What happens in extensive reading? Students enjoy reading and develop their reading habit, right? If you use extensive reading in the classroom, you know that students should be able to enjoy their reading and they should develop their reading habit. One of the best ways of helping students gain their reading habit is through reading. So what happens when we have extensive reading activities? We do not use dictionaries too much while reading, because if you use too much dictionaries, students get bored. When they get bored, it becomes not an extensive reading activity for them. It's not reading for pleasure. In extensive reading, you should read for yourself, not for others. If you want, you should. If you don't want, you don't need to read. On the other hand, in intensive reading activities in the classroom, most of the teachers used intensive based activities in the classroom. What happens? These types of reading activities are guided mostly by teachers. Okay, they have to read, they have to understand, they have to do the activities, reading comprehension questions, etc. So it can be boring for learners. And these type of reading activities do not offer learners to choose, because we have ready-made materials, text, and the students need to read or have to read these texts. And they are also mostly limited to course books. And they should also be completed in the class under the guidance of teacher. Well, we believe that intensive reading is not enough. We should have extensive reading-based activities out of the classroom. So we have some principles. How can we apply extensive reading in English language teaching classrooms? We should keep in mind that, firstly, the reading material should be easy. Not too easy, well, actually not too difficult, a little bit challenging, but not too difficult. Because according to Nation, 98% of the vocabulary, the students should be familiar with this number of vocabulary. And a variety of reading material on a wide range of topics is available. Remember, in an intensive reading activity, we have ready-made and the students do not have any choice. They need to read what they are asked. Here we have different types of reading materials, different topics. We have flexibility and learners choose what they want to read, right? They have their own responsibility. No one forces them to read, okay? We have a choice for them. We offer them choice. Learners read as much as possible, okay? When they want to read, they can read. You can't force them to read in a limited time. Okay, the purpose of reading is usually related to pleasure, information, and general understanding. Okay, reading is its own reward. Okay, that means there is not, a strict evaluation. Well, there will be, we will talk about in the following slides. And reading speed is usually faster rather than slower. Read more, understand better. And reading is individual and silent. Okay. Teachers orient and guide their students. Teacher is a role model of a reader. Teacher also, yeah, it's another important factor. Teacher should be a role model for the readers. Okay, so what happens when we apply extensive reading in EFL classes? Okay, we have, we suggest our students to read the books they want, and at the end, we gain some benefits from this type of reading. At the end, we notice that we have confident readers and we have learner autonomy, autonomous learners. They are independent. They are not too much dependent on the teacher or someone else. And comprehensible input. Language is what? When they are exposed to real language, they improve their comprehension, the language used in the meaningful context, it becomes more meaningful for them. Enhanced motivation to read, exposure to foreign language, and positive attitudes to L2 learning. Vocabulary, cultural, and personal knowledge expansions, and the other language skills are integrated. Okay. Yes. Gaining reading habits through extensive reading. Okay. We say that, we always claim that our students do not read a lot. So using extensive reading and reading circles, the students gain reading habits. How? I know that many of you are using, short stories, graded readers in language teaching classes. There are a lot of books, graded readers. These are what? Very beneficial materials for language learners in extensive reading classes. And graded readers help learning and offer a source of exposure target language, and they should be at their level. 90% of the words, as I told you. And now we have a lot of online virtual libraries, and you can make use of these libraries for language classes in reading lessons. Maybe you are familiar with mreader.org and xreading.com. All right. So as I told you, we have virtual libraries, and they are all audio supported extensive reading libraries. And mreader, xreading, Willbooks, Bookwrite, you can visit these portals and libraries. They are freely available. Maybe they have trial versions, or some libraries may require a little charge for you, but normally most of them are free. And I will have a list here. You can make use of these libraries. You can take note: LibriVox, Gutenberg, Children's Books Online, Storynori. And they have a lot of books, digital book, and loyal books, open culture, audible book, etc. Yes, we also have audio support, extensive reader, ebooks. So what happens when we have extensive reading, audio support, extensive reading? Okay, we have short stories, graded books, etc. But they need to be supported with listening tracks. When we have audio supported extensive reading, students increase their listening comprehension. What happens? Enhances correct pronunciation. Yes, because when they read, they also listen to the text, they follow the text line by line, and then they improve their listening comprehension, correct pronunciation, reading skills, writing skills, critical thinking skills, authentic language, etc. And we have also what digital devices that can be used to access online sources of literature, such as computers, tablets, e-readers, Amazon Kindle, Nook, etc. So they are also very useful devices for mobile-based extensive reading classes. Okay, we have copyright-free books, especially classics have been available in written and audio formats. Okay, so e-readers come with additional functionalities. When we have e-readers, when you use e-readers, it has some functionalities that change the way people read and process written materials. They look up or online search, and they make easier, and they can also work online and offline. You can check the words, right? Wait a minute, please. You can look up in the dictionaries, you can check the words, and you can get the meanings easily. And online graded readers, I told you, and we have also learning management systems, Moodle, EBA, etc. Some of the short stories are uploaded in this LMS, and students can choose and read, and you can also control whether they have read or not. EBA system also, as far as I understand, they have a digital library. Okay, so they are portable digital library, I mean, affordable to some extent, easy access, anytime, anywhere. And also digital reading has what? Multimedia features such as hyperlinks. I mean, when you wonder the meaning of a word, when you want to learn, you click on the word and you get the meaning directly. Glossaries, audio narration, links to online dictionaries, etc. Okay, so what about evaluation? Do we have to evaluate learners, I mean, reading, in extensive reading? Well, evaluation is not suggested for language learners because, you know, the main principle is that extensive is reading for pleasure. There is no constraint, etc. But some studies prove that reading quizzes do not always have negative impact on reading. Sometimes we may have reading quizzes on extensive reading activity. Here we have an example from, I think, M-Reader. You can check your student progress as well. They have some quizzes and how many words, how many, I mean, correct answers the students answered, etc. You can check them. Yes. Online quiz is also available for extensive reading in digital reading classes. Okay, how can also we evaluate our students' reading? Presentation, drawing, interviewing, reporting, etc. could be alternative assessment techniques for language teachers in extensive reading classes. Okay, so, right. We have extensive reading. Okay, how can we extend the extensive reading with reading circles? Reading circle is really beneficial activity for language teachers, language learners, when it is applied properly in reading classes. So what does reading circle mean and how we can apply it? Well, here we have a short story of reading circle, how it occurred. In 1980, Karen Smith is a language teacher, a teacher who one day she left some books in front of her house, and after a while, she noticed that the students formed and read the books, and they read the books and they discussed the books, etc. And she realized that the books she left in front of her house were taken by the students, and they read the books and they discussed the book. And she thought that it would be a good activity for literature circles, and students would enjoy reading. And it turned out to be a reading circle, literature circle in language classes. So yeah, it's a kind of teaching method commonly used, especially for education, but to teach a foreign language or to develop reading skills for the learners. Yes, small peer-led discussion groups we have, and student-driven collaborative learning. Students come together, they share the books, they read the books together, and they discuss, they talk about the books after a certain time. This is called reading circle. So it has, again, as extensive, well, actually it's a kind of extensive reading activity, but this type of activity actually in a systematic or organized way of reading. So it has linguistic, cultural, intercultural, social, moral, cognitive, creative effects, and it is the combination of individual reading and collaborative learning, and it's also based on communicative approach and task-based learning. We have a task here, and we are going to talk about, and we have some principle again. As in extensive reading, students choose their own reading materials, right? Teachers do not force them, do not assign them to read some certain books. And some small temporary groups are formed based on book choice. It depends on the level, age, interest of the groups. You can, design the groups according to their needs, right? Different groups read different books. Groups meet on a regular, predictable schedule to discuss their reading. Okay, let's say a group is composed of 5 or 6 members. They read a book. Each member of the group reads the same book with different roles. Okay. Yes. We have discussion topics, discussion meetings, and the teacher is facilitator, not a group member or instructor. Yes, in reading circle activities, as I told you, the teacher is facilitator, sometimes guide, and he assigns the task, roles to the learners and what they are supposed to about the books they are going to read. Okay, so we have some role sheets that I will tell you. Evaluation is by teacher observation and student self-evaluation. Well, actually, there is no evaluation in reading circle as in extensive reading. It's a kind of what? Observation, teacher observation, depending on students' performance in the classroom. Yes, when books are finished, readers share with their classmates, and then new groups form around new reading choices. Yes, I told you, we have some roles in reading circles. Well, there are different roles, but in general, we have discussion leader, summarizer, word master, passage person, culture collector, connector. So, as I told you, when the groups choose the book, the teacher assigns different roles for each member of the group, and they are supposed to read the book in line with the requirements of their responsibilities, right? Discussion leader has some tasks, some duties, summarizer has some duties, etc. It doesn't mean that they are going to read their parts. They are all responsible for reading the whole book, focusing on their roles. Okay, yeah, discussion leader acts as a facilitator, and he leads the discussion, the panel. Actually, summarizer is the person, he or she summarize the plot or the story, not too long, maybe in a paragraph, depending on the level again, right? Word master is responsible for choosing 5 keywords or phrases which are regarded as significant in this story. So word master is also going to read the book, but while reading the book, he is responsible for choosing 5 keywords. Passage person is responsible for choosing, 3 important passages. Connector makes connection between related events or characters in the story and real life. Okay, he or she should be able to connect the characters, events happening in the story to real life. Okay, culture collector finds similarities and differences between the story and real life and makes comparison. So what happens when the students complete these tasks? Well, this type of reading, at the end, students work collaboratively. So they work collaboratively and they improve their social aspect of their character. Critical thinking, it's another benefit that the students can gain from a reading circle. Well, when we read the book, a story or a novel, some points, the students have different approaches to understand or to comprehend the novels. They can criticize, they can analyze, they can comprehend the topics that we haven't understood when we read. So they develop their critical thinking ability, autonomous learning again, cultural awareness, motivation to read, social interaction is another important factor, because when they complete their task, they need to present their a task in front of the class, so they become socially interactive in the classroom, right? Combination of self-directed learning and collaborative learning. Remember, in extensive reading, they can be self-direct, they can read silently themselves. But here, they will be self. On the other hand, they need to collaborate with their friends. Okay. So here we have some worksheets. As I told you, when we assign tasks to our students, okay, we need to guide them with some, worksheets. For example, this is your worksheet. You are summarizer. This is the story, chapters, name, main events, etc. They read and fill in the blanks in the sheets. And to make them, this activity more enjoyable, you can, give them some badges while they are presenting. They hack the badges and they close, and they, here we have, and then it will be more, enjoyable for them. Yes, role sheets again, examples. And here we have some sample tasks. So when we apply reading circle in classes, as a language teacher, we should be a model for them, not dominant. We shouldn't dominate them. Okay, they should know what they are going to do, but we need to guide them. And they know what they are supposed to do. Set clear expectations. Okay, we are going to read the story in 2 weeks. So after 2 days, I want you to do the blah, blah. They know what they are supposed to do regularly. Okay, they know what they are going to do. Organize, be organized, give every student a role, but this role can change after the next presentation. Give students choices, let students shape the books, and encourage them to engage in the task. Okay, so for young learners, what can we do at the end of the presentation? Okay, they're going to present in front of the class, right, as a group. You can also develop, their writing skill by asking them or suggesting them to write. How would you continue the story as a, writing activity? right? This type of reading is also very beneficial for different learners, individual differences, okay? So let's say one of the students is very good at writing, at painting. You can ask him, okay, draw the, picture of paintings of the main character, or how would you draw blah, blah, right? So reading circle is reading for sharing. Extensive reading is reading for pleasure. Yeah, it's important that reading is not taught but caught. Using extensive reading, using reading circles, we can help our students develop their reading abilities, and they will enjoy reading. And reading classes will become more enjoyable for learners rather than a boring classes. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and enjoy reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much, yes, for your interesting talk. I can see some questions waiting for you, but
Okay.
yeah, let us first start with maybe Selami Hocam while you were resting a bit, and then we can go one by one. Yes, maybe you can stop sharing the screen, Ismail Hocam, then we can start Q&A session. And yes, before we start, I would like to remind our participants that there is a link in chat box, and we would like to hear from you, dear participants, for your feedback. And it's really important for us, for our further webinars, future webinars. So, and okay, you can see a lot of thank you messages in the chat box as well. And Selami Hocam, thanks for writing some questions, answering some questions via.
I tried to answer some of the questions.
Yes, so I will just wrap up some, and then we will finish today's webinar. Okay, so I would like to start with Selami Hocam with the question of the alternative sources, like or platforms instead of Facebook, as Facebook is a bit outdated among some students.
Actually, Özge Hocam, this study was performed in 2010.
Yes.
It was an old study indeed. However, at those days, there was no any online platform to use for any activity, not only writing. On the other hand, today we have very, very different options. Personally, I use Edmodo, and I also recommend Google Classroom. And we said that grading for teachers was a serious problem. On the other hand, in Edmodo and Google Classroom, grading is more and easier and easier. So I recommend Google Classroom and Edmodo personally.
Yes, true. Okay, thank you. And then Ismail Hocam, if you are ready, yes. And there are like some questions for you. Again, I will try my best to summarize them as we run out of time a bit. Yes. There is like one question, probably this is the general one. How can we motivate our students to read in and outside the classroom? Yeah, when they are not interested even reading something in their native language. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's a $1 million question. Reading is a difficult task. Well, actually, as I told you in my presentation, well, bit by bit, it's not easy to, motivate our students to read, depending on their needs. Reading circle is one of the best ways to motivate them, I think, because when they work collaboratively, when they work with their friends, they enjoy reading. If you, as a teacher, assign tasks to the learners, depending on their levels, as a teacher, language teacher, you should know your learners, right? So, yes. This, well, we have some certain roles, but it doesn't have to be 6 roles. You can create your own roles depending on your classes, your needs. So each week, you can start with short stories or let them choose the books they want to read at the beginning. And then maybe it's a, well, there is no control, there is no guidance according to principle, but maybe you may guide at the beginning until they gain their autonomy, you know. And
Definitely, yeah.
Another thing is that let them choose the books they are most familiar with, because nowadays, I mean, if they want to read, let's say, manga, you know what manga is, maybe,
Yes.
yeah, let them read, because they will like it, because I know that many teenagers, young students like it. And they should have, as I told you, audio tracks. It's very important. If possible, visual supported, video tracks or video supported, then they will enjoy it. And let them work collaboratively, let them, I mean, apply the principles of reading circle, then it will become actually extensive reading automatically.
Yes, definitely.
I hope it's clear.
Yes, definitely, yes. And Selami Hocam, do you want to say something about motivation? As in the questions, I can see some motivational issues as well regarding the, yes.
Actually, yes, İsmail Hocam, in addition to extensive reading, maybe we should also focus on recreational reading, reading for pleasure. And it should depend on students' interest, students' work, students' schema, and this would make it easier to increase their reading motivation. Or I hope so.
Yes, and İsmail Hocam, what would you recommend in the classroom? Intensive or extensive or a mixture of both? This is one question.
Well, as language teachers, we like is intensive readings because we want our students under the control of our teaching, and we expect them to do what we want. But we should combine intensive reading with extensive reading. Okay, maybe before coming to the class, related to topic that we are going to use in the classroom, we may ask our students, I mean, to read or to search some additional topics about the, I mean, the text, so that they can, just like flipped classroom, well, it's not a flipped classroom, but something like that. I mean, they're going to search, maybe again, in language classroom, it is inevitable that students should work not individually, but in pairs or in groups. When they work in groups or in pairs, they do a lot of things, I mean, happily, I mean, willingly, and we have experience around us. My son, I know him, but when yesterday he presented, I observed what he got, I mean, from what he gained from presentation when he worked with friends, because socially he becomes interactive. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then the next question is about to teach English literature. Is it possible to use social media to teach English literature? Do you have any idea about this? Maybe this could be a question for both of you, yes, if you want to comment a bit on it.
Well, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, reading circle is a kind of literature circle. It's originally, you know, literature circle. In literature classes, it is used a lot, because I know that in the literature classes, they, I mean, use literature circle, and yeah, well, they don't know whether it is literature circle, but in general, when you look at it, they have different roles. They analyze the book with different perspectives, and they work in groups and they present it. I mean, if you can bring such kind of activities in literature classes, it will be, I mean, more, I mean, effective in literature classes as well. In terms of social media, you mean?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Social media. Yeah, I mean, the question, like one of the participants, it was a question from one of the participants.
Well, they can share their video. I mean, when they work in groups, I mean, they can share in social media, and they can share what they are doing with their friends, and they can get valuable feedbacks from the observers or participants or comments, when they get comments, positive or negative, it doesn't matter, but they are all, valuable for language learners.
Yes, true. Yes.
Yes. Selami hocam.
Do you want to add something? Yes. And
Thank you very much, Özge. Thank you, Özge.
Yes, and yeah, there are a lot of nice messages. Thank you messages for both of you, and thank you very much for being with us tonight. I would like to end the webinar here, and yeah, maybe for other questions they can contact you directly via the email, right? So I just want to let you read the comments if you want to. There are nice messages for both of you. So, and I would like to make the last announcement, the link, yes, okay, thanks for the email address, Selami hocam. The link for the feedback for our project from the participants, and yes, for the presentation of tonight's webinar, we will post it on our project website. So,
Özge hocam, as a final point, I should add that both İsmail hocam and we are open to interaction via social media, Instagram and Twitter.
Oh, great. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes.
Here is also my mail account if those who are interested.
Yes, because we have like almost 300 participants tonight, which is so valuable for us. And the certificates will be in inbox in a few days, let's say. So thank you, İsmail hocam and Selami hocam. That was a wonderful time with you two tonight. And our participants are so happy as well, as I can see from the comments. So I hope that we will be in touch, and then, yes, want to say goodbye for now. Thanks once again. Good evening.
Can you have a screenshot?
Yes, we have screenshots.
All
yes.
right, good.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have screenshots, and probably, yes, we will share it with you. Yes.
Yeah, I hope all the participants will apply all the, suggestions, topics that we have covered in this lesson in their classes.
Yes, of course. Yes, probably. And yes, for their questions, probably they will contact you personally. Yeah, I would love to, but yes, we are running a bit out of time for tonight, so I can't cover all the questions. I did my best, to summarize them. That's what happens in our webinars. We have 40 questions, but we can only answer some of them. Yes, but it was a great session with you two today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. And
good evening, Selami hocam. Good evening, Özge. Good evening, all.